Welcome back to the table. Ryan and I just played Starship Captains. This is one that we'd heard about late last year, or probably around the Essen time, right? We hadn't had a chance to play it until we just recently got a copy. And we've just played this thing. And it is, how would you describe this? I would say it's a delightful, lightweight family game.
I would say it's Star Trek.
I mean, it is very Star Trek-y. In fact, if you've ever seen Star Trek Lower Decks, the animated show that's kind of funny, it actually, the artwork kind of is reminiscent of that.
This could have been a Lower Decks board game. I wonder if that was ever a conversation that was had.
It kind of could have. It's not, it doesn't have crude humor like Lower Decks, for sure.
No, but just like the kind of, like obviously the theme, your Starship Captains, you have a set of ensigns and cadets that you can use to take actions. They're different colors, like the Starfleet uniforms. And then, of course, the artwork is playful and kind of fun and comical. One of the first things that I would say about this game when I sat down to play it was that I do really appreciate the way it looks and the way that it sells that theme without having to be any specific IP. Just having, you have this board that's outer space. You have all these missions that seem like fun little missions you'd go on with great artwork. All of the ship upgrades have really great artwork. So it is a really good looking game, and all the components are very nice.
Yeah, the components in particular look really good. I like the artwork as well. The player boards were a joy to sort of construct. And this is a kind of a theme we're seeing in a lot of board games these days. And I think it's got to be a great cost-saving measures. It was just one big punch thing, but kind of folded. So then you just hinged them together and used some little stickers, double-sided stickers to put them together. But it creates a really cool dual-layer player board. And the backs of these things, too, which I'll put up on a photo, actually has artwork that shows like sort of the other side of the ship. But it has this track for your ensigns and cadets to kind of be in a queue that come down into your ready room. You've got dual-layered places here for damage and some cargo that you'd be carrying, as well as these little rings that you're going to use to promote your ensigns up to commanders, right?
Yeah, and I think that this queue, as you would call it, is one of the most interesting things about the game, because as you're taking actions, and you start with like 4 basic actions you can take: a red movement action, a yellow targeting action, a blue upgrade action, and then a gray repair action that anyone can do, even your colorless little cadets that can't really do much. You can do those actions, or as you upgrade your ship, you'll take actions on the board, on your little player board, as you like build rooms and things like that. But what's neat is every time you take an action, that mini goes to the back of the queue, and you'll notice the queue kind of grows. And as you complete missions and do other actions, everything you do basically, they're added to a queue in a particular order. And you know that you're going to get the front part of the queue back next round, so you can kind of stagger your actions in such a way that you control the order that your cadets are coming back, or your ensigns and cadets are coming back. That's a fun little puzzle to solve, I think.
Yeah, and that's one that also builds, because you only start out with, I think, 3 ensigns and 1 cadet in your ready room, and then 3 one of each other color ensign in your queue. And by the end of the game, you're going to collect more cadets, and they have a system built in where you can use these medals. And medals are things you're going to collect throughout the game for a variety of sources. You can use one of these on your turn at the beginning of your turn to take any figure you want and change it to a different color. That includes changing a gray cadet to a blue, yellow, or a red. Or if you have 3 of these, you can use all 3 of them to promote them. And that's when you get one of these rings. And when you put a ring around someone in your ready room, that person is a commander. And when they take an action, if they take a normal room action, they can take it. They can take it again. They could go to another room of the same color and take a different one. Or when they go on missions, if it's a commander, they're going to take double the rewards if they're lined up with a certain color. So this whole system of using the medals to change out your characters or your figures and promote them is a really cool aspect to that as well.
Yeah, there's really no way to just get more color, like the colored ensigns. You have to get the cadets, and there's different ways. You'll get some every round, like David mentioned. There's some rewards for things that'll give you extra cadets. There's also little androids that you can gain that only can go on missions and can't take any other actions. But a lot of what you're doing in the game is tied to those 4 basic action types. A lot of the rooms that you're getting are going to give you better versions of those actions. And then there's a lot of utility rooms that you can add to your ship that just either give you utility functions or give you in-game scoring points. And again, there's a little mini game here with these rooms. If you can see that every room has some symbols on it, as you're placing these rooms next to each other, when the symbols match, you're getting to take those actions again, like repairing or moving, or even just gaining some free medals. All of that stuff is going to help you kind of build into the escalation of the game. As you're getting more cadets, as you're getting more rooms, you're able to do more and more every turn because the game is only 4 rounds long.
Yeah, it is a fast game.
Yeah.
And we played it at 2 players, and I mean, it was like a half hour?
It was like 45 minutes.
Maybe 45 minutes. But I think if we played this again right now,
sure, it'd be
it
a lot
would
faster.
be really fast because we, had some questions, confirming a few things. But like we said, there's these missions out on the board. There's pirates to deal with out on the board. Then there's also these faction tracks. These faction tracks, you're going to go up and trigger off some other bonuses. Interesting variable aspect of these factions. This gold faction here, and these represent, I think, different races in the galaxy, is sort of the robots. And they always have the same event card right here. And it's going to basically bring one of these cards here that like eventually gets unlocked, and everyone has that sort of ongoing power. These have 5 different cards. So at the beginning of the game, you just randomly take one of the purple cards, place it here, one of the black cards, place it here. These are going to be triggered when someone gets to the top of these. On these tracks, if someone triggers that, it might just affect them. It might affect everyone. This one affects everyone. And you can only trigger 2 of the 3 of those. So going around here is another way to score points as well, because as you climb these up, you're going to get more points. If you go all the way around, it's 5 points, and you could go all the way around twice, although the rulebook even says they don't expect people to do it. And I would say after our initial play, it would be a challenge.
I went around one of the tracks once, and finding ways to do that, finding ways to move up those diplomacy tracks with the different factions is cool. One of the ways that David mentioned, when you have a commander, when you get to upgrade a ensign into a commander and complete a mission, you can take that reward twice, and some of those rewards let you go up those tracks. So you can have these really big turns where you're getting a ton of rewards from your missions. Especially, I had one point where I sent multiple commanders on a mission and just got those rewards multiple times, which feels really good. And, I wish this game had maybe more moments like that. I think if we played it a few more times, maybe we'd be able to get to those moments a little quicker. Because for me, I didn't really build into a really well-working oiled machine until about the end of the 3rd round, the start of the 4th round.
Yeah, and even then, I think the machine is not, for enthusiast gamers, that ultimate machine is not necessarily going to be as rewarding of a machine as you'd hope for in more enthusiast games. And that sort of brings us to what we always talk about, who's it's for, who's it's not for. This is definitely a light family weight game. However, with a lot of little things that make it a little bit more complicated than sort of a very simplistic one. It's still not terribly complex, but there are some steps that very casual gamers might not be used to. And there's some upkeep that is also, I think, well thought out.
Yeah.
But almost for the overall experience you get out of it, it's not exactly, it feels like a lot of effort for the experience that the game ends up giving.
It's a little more fiddly than you'd expect.
A little bit.
Well, I want to do things a little different. Let me talk about who it's not for first.
Okay.
Because here's the thing. This game has some really cool systems. For example, one of the things I think is really cool is this countdown system, where as you complete missions, you move these numbered tokens around, and as you count down, you're moving where you're putting the new missions, and eventually you count all the way down to 1, and then you have this system where you're going to be replenishing the board with pirates.
Yeah.
All of that is very cool, and it works very well. But it's a level of complication that you wouldn't see in most gateway or beginner games.
No.
So I think this game is definitely probably not for your beginning gamer. Like if this is your first experience in like kind of more niche hobby board games, there is a lot. That's just one example of upkeep that if you forget to do that, it can mess up your whole game. Or if you realize that you didn't put the pirates in the right spots because the rule book, it only kind of alludes to some of these things. It kind of assumes that you have some experience with board games.
There are some places in the rule book that I think they could be a little clearer for those types of gamers. With that said, and I think you'd agree with this, if there's an enthusiast gamer at the table who can do all that, it still works. But yeah, I would agree. This is not for someone who's just wanting to get a table full of brand new gamers and try a new game, because there's probably a few more things going on here that they'll be referencing the rule book, I think, a few different times. Another person, very different person who I think this is not for, is just enthusiast gamers. Because I don't think, like I said, this game gets to where you would want it to get necessarily. I think, and I don't know that I've ever said this, but this has been said before about a lot of other games. This feels to me like one expansion away from giving enthusiast gamers that type of experience.
The depth that you want, that depth of strategy that you're expecting.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And not only that, but I'd also say one step in the right direction too is to make it even a little bit longer for enthusiast gamers. It was super fast. And I'm not saying it needs to be a lot longer, but it's 4 rounds, and we were through the first 2 rounds, and we're like, whoa. And then all of a sudden we were done. Right. I mean, it's very quick. I mean, the thing could have gone 5 rounds, and I don't see any reason why you couldn't just play longer.
Yeah, I mean, it's part of the thing with it being a 4-round game is there is a lot of setup here too. I mean, you're setting up the board, you're setting up all these player boards in a specific way, the faction boards, like. You're spending more time setting up than you would, for example, like Splendor Duel, which is a game that we played recently that's about the same length of time.
And probably
takes
a little
2
bit
minutes to set up.
And as rewarding, if not more so in many respects too, I think. So there is a lot of effort put into this game for, I think, what it gives back. Not to say that it's not good, but it just doesn't have that.
I had fun with it.
Yeah, it's a fun little light game. So we said, who's it not for? Who's it for? Someone looking for a fun little
light game. I mean, definitely if you want that thematic experience. If you like those thematic games, this is very thematic with also still having some Euro-y mechanics. There's no dice to roll. Combat, which is not player versus player combat, by the way. You're only fighting the pirate ships that are out there.
And it's not super, you take a damage.
Right, exactly. It's all handled. It's just very, very quick. The turns are easy to do, and they are satisfying. You do get these really, really satisfying turns. That being said, I think that the real target audience for this, the gamer that's going to benefit the most, is somebody that has experience playing games that plays with other people that don't.
Yeah.
Because if you're that person that can say, I've got this game mastered, let me handle all of the upkeep. You just worry about taking actions and having fun. I think that's going to lead to a better table experience than people trying to fumble through the rule book or look at the player aids and say, okay, wait a minute. There's 6 steps to this that we have to check. How do we manage this, right?
Yeah, I would agree. That's a very specific group.
It is very
but
specific.
I consider myself in that group oftentimes. If I'm playing with my family, my brother, my sisters, their kids, who don't always play a ton of games, this would be a good game because I think they'll experience a lot of what this game offers and really enjoy it. Whereas people who play games all the time might look at it and go, oh, it would have been cool if they'd have done this or that to make these a little bit more interesting.
There are definitely some elements, I think, that where I liked the puzzle, but it felt like very small scale. Like I would have liked to have more rooms come out or be able to replace your rooms more often because basically once a room's down, it's down. So you only get, 6 spots possible that you can build out in your tableau. Unless you find there's some ways to get rid of them.
Yeah, there is some ways to sort of scrap one, but we also found that late in the game, which again wasn't very long, but late in the game you got very quickly to a point where you looked at a lot of these cards and thought, well, that would have been nice if I had it on the very first turn.
Right, but the game's almost over now.
The game's almost over, so how likely is it I'm going to be able to trigger this? And I don't think there's a way to kind of refresh or wash these.
There are several different or at least 2 different types of cards in here.
Yeah.
And you only have some of them for the starting row. I think this game almost would have benefited from like an era 1, era 2, where like you get to round 3 and maybe have some better cards come out or something.
Or just every round these wash. That would be nice, which I don't think is the case.
Because I got to a spot at least where I was basically full, and then this just stagnated because I wasn't buying any more rooms. So it can happen.
Yeah, so that is our thoughts after having just played Starship Captains. If you have any questions about the game, make them in the comments below. We're more than happy to talk about the game quite a bit more. Until next time, though, make sure everyone has fun at the table, and we'll see you then.